Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ify.
You're welcome to Candid Conversation. This is the daily report team, Charles Kalu, Balua Ofessor, and Ify Onyegbule. And on Candid Conversations, we talk with veterans, people who have been in the industry for some time, and we look at what it was, what it is today, and hopefully what tomorrow is going to be like. For the person who's watching, because we're streaming live on Facebook, we're with Dr. Patrick Okay. For those who used to watch those days on NTA, I grew up watching you on NTA. And it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. And would like to start off with what it was. Because there's the adage that if you don't know where you're coming from, where you're going might not be as clear as you think it should. So take us through it, what it was for you, those days in NTA.
Well, all of us started with NTA young people. I think I was 19 or something like that.
Very young.
Yeah, and at 22 I was reading national network news. To us then was one very exciting field. In fact, before we entered broadcasting, I didn't know that people got paid. I thought you just did it because you were interested, you know. We started actually on radio when Radio Nigeria was like the prime radio station in Nigeria, and there were no competitions, you know. And we started as what they call junior presentation assistants. They had those highfalutin names then, but they did tend to, you know, be on you a certain kind of, you know, aura of, you know, responsibility and. You know, so we started off as junior presentation officers, meaning we're just announcers, after a 12-week training by, I must say, some of the best trainers in presentation I think Nigeria has ever had. We had Mrs. Awani, Mrs. Stella Bassi, we had Bode Alalade, may their soul rest in peace, except Mrs. Awani is still around very much so. So we had a grueling training, and after that, we started on radio as announcers. You know, and then those days it was a gruesome process to actually go on air and say something. After your training, you had to do what they called a 3-month double banking. Double banking meant you stayed with an experienced announcer. You said nothing, you just sat behind him and observed everything he was doing. Then after 3 months, if you proved to be keenly interested, you were allowed to say a word.
Written?
Yes, a written word. The first sentence must be written. And then the experienced announcer goes off the desk and says, oh yeah, come and say, the time is 2 o'clock. So for the first 3 weeks, all you say is, the time is 2 o'clock. This is Radio Nigeria. And that one goes on for about the next 3 weeks or so. And if they find that your voice is steady enough, they may now allow you to make and announce a whole program to say, this is Radio Nigeria, the time is 2 o'clock. It's time for musical echoes, a selection of music of our land, coupled with, you know, cultural artifacts and so on, presented by Lawrence Emeka. I mean, you were not allowed to say such a thing, and everything you said was listened to critically and assessed in places you will never believe. You know, people, your bosses took their radio sets to parties. You know, when Wambe music is playing on one side, they're listening to you on the other side to see that you don't make mistakes or put the station to disrepute, because standards then was is a critical consideration in the part of the bosses. Standards were very, you know, well sought after and encouraged. And it was not so, what shall I say, internationalized, in the sense that people realized this was a radio station in Nigeria, and you're talking to Nigerians who have native names, native cultures, you know, and native ways of expressing their concerns. So you as a broadcaster had to be aware of this. So you didn't go on air just, you know, talking down in the culture or, you know, mispronouncing names and just general disregard for what was ours. It was so important. You could get sacked those days for mispronouncing a name.
Okay, we'll come to that area of pronouncing names of people and places because it's something.
But I'm going somewhere. You said broadcasting. So anyway, we started with that. Then from then it took some of us who they thought could match an international audience. They took us to Voice of Nigeria. And we were in Voice of Nigeria. Then the FM broadcasting station opened. AM, FM, stereo, it was a novel thing then. Before that, all we had close to FM broadcasting was from Ibadan. What was it again? Western Nigeria Broadcasting something. They were doing a lot of entertainment things. So that was the closest thing with Alex Condi, DJing and so on. And it used to be like a Saturday event. All young people used to like flock around the radio listening to Alex Condi from. Then FM radio started in Lagos. I mean, Lagos for sure. And it just like swept everything, It swept everything. For the first time, we realized that there was an audience. Before Radio Nigeria, you broadcast a lot, but the feedback mechanism wasn't so robust. With FM broadcasting, instant feedback. I mean, DJs became superstars overnight. I mean, they would go out and say, oh yeah, Femi, oh yeah, Patrick, oh yeah, JJ, and we enjoyed that stardom. Then I wanted to finish some course in Unilag because I hadn't quite done my degree in mass communication. I was basically a science student in England. I was interested in biology, chemistry, biochemistry, all this stuff. And when I came, I actually wanted to be a doctor until I went for the exam, and there was no exam in the hall. So, and then incidentally, somebody said, "Do you want to come to the radio station with me?" And I said, "What was that?" I said, "Well, they're doing an audition. An audition means they will test your voice and see if you have what it takes to be a broadcaster." I said, really? Can I come with you? And he said, why not? So I went, and incidentally, I made it and he didn't. So that's how broadcasting started. So somewhere in 1977, Sienna Orwell Brown, who was one of the star radio announcers then, she had moved over to TV, much to the chagrin of many of us, because she was like, a big sister to us. She looked after everybody. And she had crossed over, so she comes over to us and says, we need announcers. Wouldn't you guys like to work on TV? And I said, well, that's not bad, because radio, you had to be there in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. But TV then was just an evening affair. And I was doing this course in Unilag, and I looked at the time, it would be so convenient. I could go for my lectures in the morning till 3 or 4, then run back and we'll start work, because TV is then opened at 4:30.
So it was convenient.
It was convenient. So I jumped at the idea. So that's how I ended up on TV, And it turned out to be a very exciting thing, because we were young. We didn't really look at anything. We saw this exciting career, and it was a profession that you could go anywhere you wanted to. There was not much competition, and we were like superstars. I couldn't sit on the street waiting for a bus for 10 minutes without like 5, 6 cars stopping. Oh, Patrick, where are you going? Patrick, where are you going? Patrick, So it was great fun. It was great fun. But in the midst of that, our bosses always reminded you had to have standards. You could get sacked for the slightest mistake. But we had so many funny incidents then in trying to do the right thing. I remember my friend, Onyegbule, may still rest in peace. He was on duty one night reading the late night news on TV, because then they used to close with the late night news. And with words, you could not, if you mispronounced a word and your bosses heard, you were in deep trouble. So he was taking the late night news, and it was like a news about Russia and America having concluded negotiations. The word is negotiations. It's not negotiations, it's negotiations, and everybody is waiting for you to get it. So he got to this word, And he had this scribbling, says, Russia and America have concluded Russia and America have concluded Russia and America have concluded negotiations, Jerry.
On air?
On air. And because it was that bad. You just, your mind is, if I miss this word, I'm done, Everyone will come, crush, go breathing on your back. So you just had to. But everybody laughed. In fact, the whole station was on the floor, just laughing and laughing. The next day, they called you and said, Willie, what do you think you were doing? I said, sorry, I just had to get the word, So people understood, So the standards then were and people were always on your back. You couldn't get away with anything.
Now, let's bring it to today.
Yes.
From the things you hear on radio and the things you see on TV, what would you say? How would you raise the standards today?
Well, the thing is, to a certain extent, people have improved, one. Second thing is we have been more internationalized. But in that context, we also are shown up as affected people, because a lot of people are on there with false accents. And the thing about TV is you just be natural. Whether you have a little bit of Nigerian or parochial accent slipping in, just be yourself. So it's very, it actually detracts from your credibility when people see you trying to sound, unnatural because you want to sound whatever, But once you are natural and so on, it's fine. But what I'm saying is, to these days, we have some very natural broadcasters, very natural ones. They really impress you. Their heart and mind is in it. They're not two different personalities trying to show which one is high. So that comes across in a lot of them now. Secondly, what you find is a lot of the broadcasters now are really not conscious of any standards. They just want to do what they want to do. And there is a lot of support for that kind of thing because of the new concept of it's me, myself, this is me, this is what I want to, So normally it's the regulators and the standard keepers who are supposed to ensure that you can't have that kind of attitude. There are standards. There's standards to be followed, and you have to follow. There's no deterrence for missing standards nowadays. It wasn't so before. But having said that, we must understand that it's an audience we're trying to reach. The audience itself, how has it done? What has happened to the Nigerian audience?
So what do you think has actually happened to the Nigerian audience? The
Nigerian audience has also moved and is now standardless as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so the thing is, what you hear now is a reflection of what the Nigerian audience is. Nigerian standards is not as discerning as before. I mean, anything goes. This is why you find that most of our stuff we have is all rough, very rough. All the movies, you hardly see wholesome, sober stories that after you watch, you learn something from. We all talk about the foreign movies and why we should have, local movies and so on. But you see, when you watch a foreign movie, even if there's violence, you see commitment, you see grit, you see creativity, you see people sorting problems out at the expense of personal comfort or interest. Do you understand? These are the things that you take away from good movies. But most of our stuff is all rough. If there's not about man and woman, there's hardly any substance in the stories you get. If you try, but in the main, it's all, oh, he took my wife, took my husband, all this stuff, So there's hardly anything. Yeah, you may get entertained, but there's hardly anything to take away. So even, do you understand what I'm saying? So the audience has changed as well. It's no so longer discerning. Those days, you wanted to go and watch classics. Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. You understand, classical stuff. I mean, there's intelligence, good themes in the stories. You learn valor, you learn courage, you learn sacrifice. Do you understand? So all those things are missing. When you watch a normal Nigerian movie, most of our actors and actresses, they just want to come and show their pretty faces and pose as pretentious poses and as if that's all there is. If you are good and natural, but most of the time it's all play acting, and you can even see it.
Okay, we would also come to programming, because when we think about series like The Village Headmaster and stuff like that, we don't see things like that today. But I want to take you back to what you talked about, double banking. How important is it for people?
It was very essential. It was very essential. It's like you finish medical school and you go on internment, you have to learn. And if you don't, you can read all the stuff in the world. It's just all theory. The practice is different. We went to broadcast, we went to got degrees in mass communication. But you find that when you're in the field, in the real thing, hardly anything you learned you can even put into practice. But in practicing, you pick up so much. You adapt, you gauge where the general thinking is, you adjust, you learn, and then by the time you come out with the knowledge of the people, knowledge of yourself, knowledge of what you're doing, and it's all there. But you go to school, you come out, and you want to it's not working. So that's the same thing. Double banking was so essential because you've learned all this stuff in the training school. Now this is reality. And it's not always pleasant. If I tell you incidents of people who thought that, they learned this thing and they can just perform.
Share with us some of them.
Very, very many. I remember once, one of our very top writers on current affairs went over to NTA, and because he thought all these newscasters are just there doing stuff. So on that particular day, the newscaster didn't show up, so he was called to stand in. And those days things were a bit more organized. You had a wardrobe room, and you went there, just pick anything that would suit you. So he went, picked up, they dressed him up and all that. And because they always say, these guys, they just... So, now let me tell you, even the studio atmosphere can be daunting. Because like you guys, now you set up the camera, all the lights are on, and they're focused on you. You understand? And in a minute, everybody is talking, if you're walking around, so there's no... A minute to airtime. The director comes and says, silence, studio. And everywhere's quiet.
Pin drop silence.
And the lights are on you. 30 million people are watching. That is what, those who are nervous, that's what they think. When I go on TV, I don't even think of, I just say I'm looking at the cameraman and I'm talking to a friend. That's how I look at it. But a lot of people, 30 million people. So that's what probably was in his mind. And they gave him the script, and everywhere was silent. The director started, like they raise the fingers as they count down 5, 4, 3, 2. Good evening. Good evening. And the paper actually tore on air. The paper actually tore on air. Blank. The director, everywhere went blank. What happened, Mr. I didn't know it was like this. Cold sweat all over his face. So it's not that easy. It's just to sit there. I tell you many things, even on radio, people just started. There are many things you can't understand. I remember one of our brothers from the north, very brilliant broadcaster. And those days were not as rich as you guys, Sometimes you come to work, there's no 10 kobo on you. We used to have a meal with 20 kobo, don't forget.
Life was good then.
Yes, with that 20 kobo, you had dodo, you had rice, you had beans, and you had meat. So you understand? So sometimes you just don't have anything. And when we used to like ask from each other, so this time, and normally you sit down just like me and you sitting when there's a program on air. But then a minute to the time, the studio manager tells you through the glass and puts up his or her finger, and you know that you should get ready to go on air. Because when the light comes and it's red, and you know you're live in the studio. So this guy was broke. He had been asking a friend for 2 naira, to go and he was just like, can you just give me 2 naira? And when the studio manager gave the signal, and before he knew, the light came on and said, "This is Radio Nigeria, the time is 2 naira." And the whole place was on the floor, of course. The whole place was on the floor. So he didn't realize what he had said. So when he saw people on the floor dying because they can't talk while the studio is alive, so everybody was like restraining him, but you could see everyone on the floor. And by the time they put up the button, the place exploded in laughter. Did you know what you just said? So what did I say? He said the time is 2 naira. So you can get that nervous. It's happened to us so many times. For example, about the names, you were talking about names. One of the things that really scared us as training announcers was mispronouncing of Nigerian names. So, and that was like a primary test to see.
So what was the magic? What was the trick?
When I think my first announcement on radio was a music program called Juju Music or something like that. And I'm coming. When I tell you, you understand. So the announcer beckons me and said, "It's your time to announce this on." Very excited. I said, I'm going on it. And I looked at the time and said, "The time is 5 minutes past 2. This is Radio Nigeria. Well done." In my mind, I said, "Well, you've done it. Well done. It's now time for Juju Music. And today we're featuring Ido Animation and his little big brother."
You said that? On
air. And I kind of felt the wall shake a bit. And I was looking at it, what's the matter? So I flicked up the button and the whole place exploded. What did you say? Who is Ido Animation? Because I saw the SH. AWN. And, Sean Connery came to my mind, and all the Seans came. I just said, "Do animation." And the whole place was. It took me 1 week to overcome that.
Were you penalized?
Of course. I wasn't on air for about a week or so. Then my colleague, I'll tell you about my colleague, then they had the Commonwealth Games in Australia. And this was main news, and that was much more a criminal an offense. Apparently he hadn't checked properly. And he was on the news, said, "The Nigerian contingent have arrived in Australia, in the city of Adelaide."
What happened? Did he not rehearse?
The boy, he just saw, maybe he rehearsed, but he saw it and it didn't occur to him that this is a different kettle of fish. And just in Adelaide. By the time he finished the news, there were 5 people waiting at the door. The director of news, director of programs, and so on and so forth. It was Sunday Young Harry then, and may so rest in peace. And he just busted in. "Excuse me, what did you just say? Please, can you go back to story number 5 again, please?" So, then we're really, so he goes back. So, could you just read that story again? So he went, he made the same Adelaide. "Are you educated? How did you get here? Who employed you? I really want to know. And I want this on my desk before 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. I want to know who tested you, who employed you, and you are calling this Australian city that everybody knows It's been everywhere on BBC, on radio station, all over the place. And you're giving me Adelaide. Anyway, so many things like that used to happen because of the nervousness and the seriousness with which you wanted to please your bosses, because you didn't want to be, blacklisted or anything. People did even slightly less things, and they were laid off for months.
So when you hear these kind of, things on air, people mispronouncing names, when you listen, you sit back and listen, what comes to your mind?
Well, first of all, there is no more control, quality control. And I just look at it as part of the general national mandate. Because nationally, there is no control. Sorry to say, but I mean, you and I know those days when there were standards everywhere. There were standards everywhere in the ministries, in parastatals, in structures. There were controls. But now, what they say in England, for example, in America, you think twice before you commit a murder. But some people are still courageous to go ahead because one day you'll be caught. Even if it takes 10 years, you will be caught because your files will be there, procedures will be followed, and 10 years, Nigeria, and somebody commits a murder, who catches?
Now,
you cannot be sure. So because
nothing happens. Something goes wrong and nothing happens. People just go on.
Because the system, the order of doing things is no longer meticulously followed.
Where did we lose it?
I think there was a time there was a false sense of nationalism. And that nationalism meant that everything we learned had to be jettisoned, which was not true. Because if you look, all countries in the world, at one time or the other, were colonized. Even England was colonized by the Romans. The Romans used to call them barbarians. China was colonized by the Japanese. America, of course, is a country of colonialists, if you say. But even today, if you go to England, you see cobblestone streets that were built by the Romans and left there as artifacts of history. And if you go to places like Colchester, Chester, Manchester, anywhere you hear Chester, you know that was a Roman fort. There. And they kept all these things because you take what is good and jettison what is bad. The British didn't just jettison everything Roman to say, well, they colonized us, bye-bye. No, they took what was good, the educational system, the system of administration, you understand? They took what is good and jettisoned the bad. But here we had this concept that everything we learned from the British and so on was to be jettisoned. So, and then we didn't have anything to replace it with. That's the chaos we have now. So that's what went wrong. And it was across everything. Those days in Radio Nigeria, if you wanted to play a record on air, you had a form which you filled. First the artist, the publisher, the company and everything. And then you filled out how many minutes of that record you're going to play. Because the writer, the publisher, must get royalty. And you filled all the forms of the record we use a day before broadcast. And you took it to the library.
So everything is
planned and ordered. And you went to the library because the number of everything is there.
So you don't just walk into the studio, and start out your show.
No. The librarian takes your list and goes to the library to look for the record you want. And it's all well done. A, B, Juju Music, ABC, so, publisher, these, or everything well in a big, large library. When they came, and that's happened in every aspect. So that is what went wrong. We threw out the baby with the bathwater. the system, we didn't have traditional knowledge of public administration. Yes, we had tribal groups and so on, but they were not to cope with large nations. We didn't have those systems. And these people had it. They came and entrenched it, just like they learned from others. But in the concept that, we don't want anything with colonial mentality, and people like Fela didn't help the situation. Because if you behave properly, you were a zombie. And not be gentleman at all, and be African man, original, so you can behave anyhow.
So would you say that the proliferation of stations, radio stations, when the private stations came, did it make things worse? Talking about standards, calibration.
You know that when radio stations came, the owners had divergent interests and divergent reasons for setting them up.
Positive?
Well, some negative. A lot of it was political. People wanted an avenue to project their political ideas and to create their audiences. And if you look around, it's only now that the point is even foreigners who own the stations, they have a bit of creativity. If you look at most of our stations, music, foreign music, but you know, you listen to stations like Nigeria Info. What's the other one? They have Wazobi or something, and it's not just all about music. You could listen and get something and celebrate your intellect or something. But the creativity wasn't there. The music, then you say all this, the same style, everything. Everybody want the stations to sound like an American station or something. So people own stations for different reasons. And because of that, their styles had to be, you can't say that this is one universal standard.
But are the styles different?
Well, their styles are really, it's the same thing. You listen to one, it's just like you're listening to another. So that's part of what we're saying, that there are no standards, no parameters, nothing. Everybody's just, even the regulatory bodies, they say, this is regulated. What are they regulating? Nobody is regulating TV, nobody is regulating anything because of the rubbish and crap that you see. Stations that are supposed to be mature, they're showing stupid music videos, bawdy music videos, even national stations. You can't find that. You can't see BBC, for example, in England showing all music videos, rubbish, pornographic music videos, because they had no content.
Let me come to the place where you truly operated, that's the NTA. When you watch the station today, sincerely, what are you thinking? Talking about quality?
You want to put me in trouble.
Content.
You want to put me in trouble.
Share with us.
Well, listen. Sorry. I think as a Nigerian, as a broadcaster, and someone who is keenly interested in the progress of my country, I must say those stations have not moved a step. It's sometimes when you watch, you wonder if they're in this world. If they're in this world. Because the standard is so terrible. And you're wondering, do these people watch TV stations? Even local stations, some local stations are doing well. Standard-wise, I mean like creativity, presentation. We're not talking about announcers now and anything, but graphic creativity, general presentation styles, and all that. Some are trying. But I'm sorry to say, but that some of the stations with the largest reaches are just sitting in one place, treating broadcasting as normal Nigerian business.
Now, let's look at your generation of broadcasters. What did you leave behind? Who did you mentor? What did you do to see that the profession actually thrived?
You would have done that, and then the forces of society would have swept them apart. You know, when we were young and growing, we had so many followers. Young people who were interested, and we mentored and taught and we did a lot of stuff. But you see, when I was in charge of NTA2 Channel 5, for example, and there was a time there was this sweeping quality control issues going on. And I knew some people had slipped into my staff whom I didn't actually approve. They were recommended from Oga on top. You understand? So I knew those people, to me, they are not my staff. I mean, these are not people who can meet up to what I thought.
But you still took them on.
Would you have a choice? In any case, so when this sweeping thing came about, pruning staff and retaining those who were really good, without prejudice, I subjected the names of those I thought were not meeting up to the standard of the station. You understand?
Were they let off?
A week later, the very people I said were on air, and I was now being regarded as enemy number one. And that enmity held for many years. And the thought was, and we didn't know he didn't like us, so she wanted to ruin and put sand in our garri and all that stuff. And I said, well, I'm just doing my job, quite honestly. I was told to do, and this is it. You know, as a person, I have no problem with you, but there is a standard.
The job.
Yeah, so you can state your own. But as I said, the general malay. Now, people go into broadcasting because of who they know. Somebody just gives a note to someone and they're on air. They don't care whether they're good or not. It's the interest of the person who has sent them. You know, so all this kind of thing, you can do all the training you want, orientate as many as you want, but the general pervasive spirit of the whole place doesn't favor, you know, consistent quality consciousness, as it were.
Was there an improvement when you had Mr. Shola Omole, you know,
on NTA?
Holding the fort at that time.
On NTA?
Yes.
Well, I didn't quite have the chance to assess whoever it was in NTA, but there are many people who came and who said, thank God, things are going to change. Then they live out their tenure and nothing has changed. You know, so sometimes people look potentially effective until the real job starts. I remember one of my friends who was the DG once said that the only time he enjoyed NTA was his first 6 months because he was still naive. After that 6 months, everything was something else. So even if you wanted to, you couldn't.
So you didn't even assess when Ben Bruce was also in charge.
Yeah, I says when Ben is my friend, so I'm sure he tried his best. All these people try their best, I'm sure. But the system itself just will not yield. It wouldn't yield. You see, the thing is to me, if someone, let's be honest, we're all Nigerians, if somebody actually wants to have an effective national television broadcasting authority, he has to do a lot of surgery. Surgery of the ideas first, then surgery of the personnel. The kind of people quivering at this stage, national TV, can't even ask a straightforward, fluent, intelligent question. They say, so what do you say? On national television. You know, it's not on. It's not on.
So the private stations, have they fared better?
Of course. I mean, I don't want to advertise any stations, but there's...
You can talk about them.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see Channels, for example. Channels is trying. Even TVC now is trying. You know, we're beginning to see qualitative Nigerians. It's not all, you know, we're beginning to see, and the national station can do the same. All they have to do is change their thinking. They can do the same, and the national station can become an effective, broadcasting television network in Africa. It can.
All right, time for me to take some of the questions because people are watching, and I have this one. Femi Showolu says, if he ask him about pop round the world.
Femi, my friend, Femi, I hear you have retired. And the first thing they told me when they came, say, well, they talked to Femi, and Femi has retired. I said, that's small boy. Then what am I still doing? Femi, pop around the world now. That was like a breaking thing. We enjoyed it. It was fun. It was great fun. And then now if I think back, because somebody actually came to me the other day, why don't you float something like pop around the world? You still have what it takes. I said, yes, I have what it takes, but I'm not so stupid anymore. You understand? I can't be here talking about foreign artists and nonsense concepts and so on and promoting them. I can't do that anymore. Then it was fun. Everything foreign was nice, It was like the in thing. You enjoyed it and so on. But I can't do that now. In fact, I had an idea which I sold to someone, and I said to him, if I was still interested, I have an idea through which I can make $1 billion. Not even them in the West have thought about it.
So are you sharing the idea?
And I'm not, because I'm not going to do it.
Why?
Because I don't believe in such things anymore. I can't do pop around the world anymore. It was fun, great fun. And and it took a lot of sacrifice because people don't understand. Nowadays, no one wants to make a sacrifice. Do you know, I used to jump on Okada from Surulere sometimes because the traffic would be horrendous. And the program was 11:05 till 1 o'clock, 2 whole hours, just me on radio. Prime radio, And sometimes you leave home, there's this horrendous traffic. And many times I pack my records, just put them on my shoulder and start running. I see any machine. There were and there were not so many Okadas then. You saw dispatch riders. They were not really Okada. So I would just stop anyone, please. So, where are you going? I'm going to radio. What do you have? Oh, pop around. Oh, are you Patrick? Okay, yes. Oh, yeah, in time. And that many times we did that. And so where the studio was on the 7th floor in Martin Street. And there were no lifts. So if you got there late, you were in trouble. You had to run up all those 14 stairs and you entered the studio panting. Tokumbo Yeride, who is still my friend now, sometimes will be on duty and be waiting. Well, we're still waiting for Patrick. Patrick will soon be here and all that. So, but saying that was so embarrassing. So you made sure, or you tried to be there on time. But then you bust into the studio, record in your armpit, sweating a lot. And the guy looks at you and says, Patrick will soon be ready. Oh, Patrick will soon be ready, Then you take your breath back, and then you begin to relax, and then you start. Then, do you know how much we're getting paid then? 10 naira a week. 10.
That was some money.
No, it wasn't. At that time, 10 naira couldn't even buy.
Week?
Yes.
Okay.
10 naira couldn't even buy one record. So most of the records we used were maybe friends who traveled and bring, or some shop that was friendly to you and they knew who you were, so you could just go there and pick up records. And you couldn't even afford the record. There was no flash drives. Yeah, well, no flash drives, no all this stuff you have now for storing anything. It was tough, but because it was so much fun, you didn't consider the toughness.
So what did you think, or what do you think keeps people in the job? Because if you're talking about your time now, and people were not making money in broadcasting,
no, we're not.
People still stayed on for years on the job. What was it that was
the love of the job? Was the love. Like broadcasting, like entertainers. If you're a banker, for example, do your job, it takes you time to get your reward and feel the satisfaction. As a broadcaster, your satisfaction is instant. So it's like you have an addiction to cigarettes. You smoke and you're excited. You smoke and that's how broadcasting is for those who are really interested. It's very exciting, and no matter what inconveniences or lack of money, you wanted to be a broadcaster. There was no other job. You wanted to be a broadcaster.
let's talk about some of your colleagues, the people you worked with. What kind of memories do you have?
A lot of, I remember some of them who, to me, were closer to me than brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, a lot are late now. Their souls rest in peace. It's not like now. Those days, when you were going to broadcasting house in Ikoyi, when you left your home, there was a spirit of elation in your heart that you're going to meet colleagues.
Were like family.
Yes. It was more like a family. That's why I keep talking about people like Siene, Orwell Brown. They were like, elder sisters to us. People like Mrs. Awani. All the gamut of people, they were like elder sisters. It wasn't the camaraderie, the feeling was tremendous, and you didn't hesitate if you had a problem to approach any one of them.
What memories of Mrs. Anike Agbaje-Williams do you have?
No, I didn't work closely with her. I just heard about her a lot. I heard about her. I wasn't. I know she was one of the pioneers from Western Nigeria broadcasting with WNBS. But I wasn't close to her. I heard about it. There are people we heard about, like Ronke, Ayuba, Otalin, Julie Coca. No, Julie I was close to, But the others, so I don't know much about her, but I heard a lot. You couldn't be in broadcast in those days. You didn't hear about Anike Agbaje-Williams.
Now, people have come up with questions about you, your team up with Yinka Craig. How do you remember him?
No, Yinka was like an elder brother to me. I mean, we quarreled a lot, but we enjoyed each other's company a lot because Yinka was very cerebral. He was quick-witted. We can pander at ourselves for 1 hour without getting bored. And he was versatile. He knew a little about everything, So it was fun, great fun. And would get to a place, for example, sit down in 5 minutes, we mapped out what we're going to do. He was that kind of person. So I found him, it was like a mate, actually. It was like a mate. But when I left broadcasting, when he started his own business, we didn't see each other much after that. Because, you see, I think broadcasting is a talent. And if it's a talent, then there's an innate love for it. And something is missing in you if you are not doing it. Just like they say that if you are doing something for which you have a talent, the work will no longer be like work. It will be like normal activity of daily life if you have a talent in that regard. It's when you don't have a talent and you're not marked out for something that becomes a chore. You don't look forward to going to work because that's not you don't look forward to doing anything about it because, So when we both left broadcasting, well, I never actually left, but like formally as to broadcasting. Nah. It depends on what they are, because unfortunately, if you do not fend for yourself, even when you're a broadcaster, you're going to end up being a pauper.
Say that again.
If you do not think of fending for yourself while you're in broadcasting, you end up being a pauper. I've watched it happen to so many. And the reason is this, that as a broadcaster and somebody who is known, you're always expecting things to flow towards you. And because you're always expecting things to flow towards you, you don't make the attempt to be proactive.
To plan for tomorrow.
So it's as if you're waiting. And I've seen people wait from they are 40, 50, 60, 70, next thing you hear they are dead. So young broadcasters should know, at this time, this is when to forge your contacts, to forge your roots, to start thinking of when you will not be a broadcaster. And now you have a chance to do anything, because when people know you, they seem to trust you. So the ideas you think you can put in place to, ensure an economic existence after you leave. You can put them into practice now. If you don't, you will leave broadcasting and you start waiting for things to flow towards you, and they never come.
Bisi King Paul Kester, remember her?
My very good friend.
She says it's great listening to you.
Incidentally, I saw a photograph the other day, and I was saying, my friend, I haven't seen BC for a long time. You know, when BC came into broadcasting, she brought in something. She had this beautiful British accent, which was deliberate and drawn, and that attracted me to her a lot. You know, and
beautiful British accent.
Yes.
So don't you think that that's what some young people see today?
Yeah, but the point is,
they want to copy.
Yeah, but point is, with her, it was natural. Once it's natural, nothing wrong. You know, once it's natural, it's a big plus, because how many Britons can speak my language fluently? So it's a big plus, but it's when you force it and the affectation is obvious, that's where there's a problem. So BC had one of those things. I hope she hasn't lost it, you know. And so that was one. She was very calm, very likable person, you know, very nondescriptly unobtrusive. You could be with BC and she would just be smiling and saying things like, but so that's the memory I have of her. And I haven't seen her for some years. I hope she hasn't grown too old like me.
I'm sure she's watching and she'll hear that. Now, let's talk about training.
Yes.
What do you say is a place of training in broadcasting?
There has to be training.
I need you to put it in perspective. If we talk about the Radio Nigeria Training School, what it used to be yesterday and what it is today.
Just like I said, like everything has been affected. Radio Nigeria Training School was top notch. It was one of the top training schools in the country. The standards were very high. The equipment and everything you needed. I think Radio Nigeria actually exposed the very primordial things that are needed to train people in broadcasting. And because it was government owned, they could sponsor, they could afford it, you know. And the standards were so high. The standards were so high. So I don't know about now. Just like I say, everything has been affected. Everything has been affected because there's no method, there's no order of anything. People are doing things just the way they like. So that has affected broadcasting as well. And so this is why you see everyone just do just what they like.
Now, many professions have bodies that regulate the practice and, of course, the practitioners. What is happening to
we have Bond, we have NBC, Nigerian Broadcasting Commission.
Do they call honor personalities or presenters or DCAs? Do they call them to order to say, okay, you mispronounced this word, this is what you should do?
NBC can't do that.
So that's what I'm saying.
NBC is too big.
Professions
yes.
have, you know,
bodies
smaller bodies
that ensure quality.
So what's happening?
Control.
Happening to broadcasting?
Maybe we've all been distracted. Everybody's been distracted. You know, nowadays is money. When we're in broadcasting, money was a last consideration. It wasn't the primary thing. But now it's money. How much more say? It's only things that are financially rewarding that people want to do. So there's no commitment. You're talking about people with commitment. You know, I know there are other professional bodies in other professions who, for a reason, they know what motivates them, you know. But for broadcasters, I don't really know what can motivate you. You start something, there's no support. You start something, there's no support. I mean, do you understand? So some people have tried. Some people have tried. I think there's some. I think John, for example, has academy for training, and I can trust him. He will have the highest standards, you know. Apart from him, I don't know about others who have invested in training, which should be very paramount, because you can't complain about standards when you have not trained anyone to have standards, you know. So I really am not aware of any major academy that's in charge of instilling the kind of qualities necessary for broadcasters. There's no, listen, Listen, it's gotten so bad that, listen, you are on air. Once one or two people recognize you on the street, you think you're a superstar, and you live on it. So that's the new thing. Everybody thinks they're all superstars, and they're doing well. So,
do you think advertising or advertisers have they contributed to what is happening in broadcast journalism?
Well, the thing is, everywhere else in the world, advertisers have a lot of say because they are the ones who provide the funds.
Was it like that during your time?
Not really. My time was, every broadcasting was heavily subsidized. Government was, in charge, paying all the bills. So that is why they can also impose people on you. Then of course you got commercial. I'm sure there are stations that can now solely exist on their own, and many are, because of the commercial consciousness, which they now have. But advertisers, of course, they have a great role to play, because if they don't advertise, where are you going to get your funds? If you're not a government broadcasting service, your funds come mainly from advertisers, and advertisers dictate the pace in a way because they subliminally control your content. Why? Because they have to indicate what kind of thing they want their product to be associated with. And in that way they dictate. They will tell you what their preference is. And if you want to make money, you have to listen to what they want. And a lot of what advertisers want may not have anything to do with quality. Yes, no. They just want someone, look at all the stuff we have. Some commercials are nice, some are just roughness. There's no decency. You watch. For every 10 commercials you see if anyone is really nice and appeals to the intellect and all that. They're all very rough, some shouting, all kind of rough attitudes, rough behaviors and so on, as long as it makes people laugh. Hey, data, hey. So when the young people are growing up with this stuff, why would you blame this? What they are seeing all the time. Local content, everything. There's no.
Well, basically, Paul Kester says, thank you, Patrick. It's good you didn't say how I got into trouble for mispronouncing Nigerian names and was eventually moved to production. Getting names right was very important then.
Yes, it was. That I told you that Bisi just came fresh to Kumbo, So, like me, she had problems with the names. But I think I got over that because the fear of mispronouncing made me actually study. But you understand, it's not so easy. If you see, English flows like this. For example, you are going to say, the National Commissioner for Works, Dr. Femi Okunu. You understand? So you're getting at a certain cadence, and all of a sudden you have to like Dr. Bajamila Femi Okunu. Then you go back again. I said that, So it's not. It was not easy, and BC had a problem with that a lot. So it's like how you have developed language and the kind of cadence you are used to. So for some people, it's really difficult to readapt, but others got over it.
Yes, Azuka Jebose says, I missed this mega baritone for 35 years, pop around the world with Patrick, okay? So what are you doing now?
I'm still popping, but not.
What are you popping?
I'm not
Let's
popping.
talk about it.
I'm
What are
not
you doing?
popping. I'm not popping music anymore. I'm not popping music. I'm trying to pop the idea that young people can change this country. I went to give a lecture to about 5,000 graduate students at Futo. Okay. They were graduating. I looked at all of them and I said to them, I think 90% of you want after this to get a visa and go to America, yeah? If that's not in your mind, raise your hand. So you see, a lot of young people are not thinking They're thinking of the excitement of Europe and America they see. And I had to bring them back. I said, please, can we go to the history of America? The first person who made America click, because after the first settlement of the Mayflower occupants in Jamestown, all that, the first town was wiped out because of hunger and hostility from Indians. The person who actually made the difference was a young man of 23 who took tobacco from the Spaniards, which was then a criminal, in fact, a capital punishment crime at that time, and went to Virginia and planted tobacco. From there, the economy grew. If you look at the set of people who developed America in the first maybe 100 years, 1492 to 15, these were between 17 and 23. Those who went west and started migrating from the east to the west, don't forget, it takes you 5 hours to fly from New York to Los Angeles in the same country. That's like flying from here to London. So all that land, inhabited by hostile Indians, young people on their own just started marching west. If you see the average age of those who built the initial railways, which opened up America, they were youths. First World War, Second World War, average age of American soldier was 19.
So what mistakes are the youths of today making?
No, so I was telling to them, I said, so all these young people have shed their blood to build their country. What have you done? You want to go to a country built on the blood of young people who have suffered to make it there. And then you have this vast country with its potentials, and all you are thinking of is how you are going to go to America, go to England. Is it fair? So those people will say, welcome. Like now they say Donald Trump is racist, he doesn't want to have people in America. Why can't you stay in your country and develop it? Why do you want to go to America? Is America yours? I mean, sometimes people talk shamelessly. Develop your country. Young people should look inward, even if it means sacrifice. But nobody wants to sacrifice now. Everybody wants to
come to
American. Yeah, so the other day I was watching a documentary from the Netherlands, and some Nigerians and Africans were in a voluntary health center where volunteer doctors just come to treat them free because they don't have money to pay for health care. And after the treatment, one of them said, oh, God bless you. God bless you. So the interviewer was asking him, so where are you from? He said, we didn't know it was like this. We didn't know it was like this. The picture we get in Africa is that these people, your people are enjoying, and you're doing this, that. That's the boy. When I got here, see what I'm seeing? So you see?
It's never green out.
Yeah, you are running to, why? I'm sure that if those people stay and put their heads down, a lot of young people, what they will not do here, they will go abroad and do it. So, we have a disorientation. There's been a national disorientation at the highest places.
Now, during your time, how open were you and your colleagues to reading, gathering information? There was no, you didn't have phones like people have today, the internet and all of that. How did you get all of the information?
See, the thing is, let me tell you something. I don't give my children pocket money. They earn their pocket money on the dining table. Because during dinner, it's question time. And I give as much as 10,000, 30,000. One day, one of my children won up to 500,000. Of course, I don't have the money. I tell him I'll pay you. So occasionally I'll pay. When I get, I pay. Why? And I ask them questions, general stuff, questions. Where is Mauritius? And it's like, ugh. I say, you should know. Why don't you know? You have your Google. You have everything on earth to get information.
On your smartphone?
On a smartphone. We had to dig and read and research encyclopedias, magazines. When I was about 18, 19, I had a weekly supply of Newsweek and Time magazine. A weekly supply. The guy would just, sometimes I would not pay. When I get money, I get salary, I pay. Had a weekly supply. We read and read and read to get at information. We didn't have anything like all this stuff you have now. Even as a DJ, there was no information, so you had to read, entertainment magazines on a regular basis. There was one called Right On Then, where information about musicians and all, because you can't just be presenting music. You had to tell people, give information about the artists, what's happening, and so on. And all those things were not available then. We had to do research stuff and read and read.
Okay.
Now,
I came up with this 25 mistakes, of course, that radio presenters must avoid. I just
Yes.
want you to take a look at page 6. That's
Yes.
where you have the content.
Yes.
Because someone who's been you're like a father in the profession.
By God's
When
grace.
you look at the content, let's look at one.
Yes.
Many think they're famous.
Yes.
Would you like to speak?
Number
to that?
6.
Yeah,
Page 6. Okay.
I'm famous. I'm a brand. I know everything. Yes, there.
Page 6. No. Is this it?
Yes, that's the content.
Okay, I'm very famous. Okay. I'm a brand. I know everything. You cannot correct me. I don't need a mentor. The stage is nothing without me. Popular by phone calls. Yeah, well, you have just captured the Malay. This is what we're saying, trying to say at the beginning, that nowadays, once one or two people recognize you on the streets, you're a star. You understand? You're a star. And after that, you feel there's nothing else you need to learn. You're already a star. But what kind of star are you? First person you need to be a star to is to yourself. You need to be a star to yourself. And what's that? That means the best that you have honed it. You have honed it. In other words, well, you can't say. In other words, you're going into broadcasting, you must have an idea of what you want to do. You must have had mentors, people you really admired and so on. You say, I want to be like this person. Why did you want to be like him? Is it the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he bandies ideas, or his knowledge? There must be something. So you have to be a star to yourself first by exhausting who you think you are. I mean, your talent and everything. Have you done it to the best of your own ability? If you depend on what people just see you and recognize, well, I see you're on Chinese television, and that's it, and that pleases you, it's fine for you. That's your standard. But there are those who want to say, well, I want to be the best. I've exhausted everything. I've learned, I've studied. When I watch myself, I am who I think I want to be. One of the things they don't do with all the lists you've got here, which was really thoughtfully brought out, because this is the Malay of the present generation, people don't do self-assessment. In those days, even the pop around the world they're talking about, there is no program I did not use to record off air. After the program, I would go home and play it back to myself. And I would say, is this the person I want to sound like? And where there were mistakes, maybe, when you're talking, there's a certain cadence you're supposed to have to keep excitement and so on. And then when you listen to yourself, you say, nah, I didn't get it there. I didn't do this or I didn't do that. So you correct yourself. People have no system of self-assessment now because everybody thinks I'm already a star, I'm a brand, I'm this, I'm that, Once you get into that rut, it's difficult. What they say in broadcasting is be perpetually unsatisfied with your performance. Be perpetually unsatisfied with your performance. Because the minute you begin to be satisfied, you have stopped growing.
right, so as we round off this conversation, what are we going to watch out? What should we watch out from you? Because you can't have all what it is that you've talked to us about and more that we haven't talked about in this interview. And you just relax, fold your arms, and see things, move at snail speed in the profession. Do you have any plans to reach out to stations, at least to show them how to do things better?
I have, actually 2 years ago, I started an academy to train announcers, newscasters, presenters. Unfortunately, as I was about to swing into action, some mad person just came and destroyed my studio. So, but that has to be on hold. But I'm building another studio now. You're quite right. It won't be nice to just stay there and watch what is happening. I want to train presenters, train newscasters, and then, in fact, right now, I give lectures in persuasive communication. Because when you look at it, mass communication is part of persuasive communication. And the principles of it can be applied personally for you to be successful in life and in business. So I teach persuasive communication. I used to do part of that in Lagos Business School. I've had many executives as students. A lot of them are now in high places, and I meet them at the airport, and they say, "So how was it?" I say, "I'm now in South Africa. I'm now in this. I'm now in that." I say, "So you've had a useful time?" They say, "Yes." So I teach persuasive communication, but that's for executives. But for announcers, broadcasters, I have that in place, because just like you say, I can't be here sitting now and saying that with the little knowledge I picked up or the experience, that there's no avenue to pass it on. I have great plans. I have great plans for them. There's a studio downstairs, proper TV studio. Once that is ready, I'm going to be having courses for that, yes.
Good. Thank you for having us speak with you. It's a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you for coming. It was exciting.
And we'll keep our ears to the ground,
yes,
to know what's going to happen.
You will hear. You will hear. In fact, when I open it, you'll be there. Yes.
God willing.
But thank you for writing this. I hope that people will get to read it. It will help a lot of young broadcasters if they will just read this and get the kind of orientation they should have. Because that's the problem, lack of proper orientation. I think they should go through this, because a lot of these things impede on who they are as broadcasters and even who they will be in life. Because if you don't succeed in something you're doing, how are you going to build the road of success for the next thing? When they say that quitters are losers, you don't actually do something well. And between the little things you will not do and the big things you cannot do, things that the chances that you are doing nothing. So it's to be good in whatever you're doing, no matter what, whether there's immediate reward or not. Be good because you owe it to yourself.
Thank you.
All right then.
Yeah.